All right, Marilee, thank you for the intro and setting the stage. This really is a timely discussion. We've done this webinar, at least versions or iterations of this webinar, several times, and it just, every time we do it, a week later, there's more information about the EEOC conducting hearings or new cases where attorneys are coming back to us and saying, hey, the EEOC is reviving this dead systemic case, and they're trying to push open the door again. It's just happening time and time again, more often than we can even talk about. But to get us focused on today's presentation, it's important that we all understand the difference between disparate treatment and disparate impact. First of all, disparate treatment is what we're talking about when we talk about that somebody has intent to discriminate. I'm discriminating against somebody because she's a female or he is a minority. And to show disparate treatment and to show intent, usually you're collecting a mosaic of evidence. It's really just a fancy term for saying an overwhelming abundance of evidence, perhaps emails or interviews with folks that show that you're discriminating against a specific individual. What we're talking about today is a more systemic approach that the EEOC and the OFCCP are taking, and it's aligned with what's called disparate impact. And here's the difference. Oftentimes we have employers, they'll call us up and they'll say, how can we be worrying about this stuff when we don't have their gender or ethnicity information in front of me? When I'm inviting people to hire, to come on site for an interview, or we're inviting people to take a written test, or those that take the written test, we don't have their gender and race ethnic information in front of us. How can we discriminate? That's the big difference. Disparate impact requires no intent. In fact, what it means by definition is when you have a facially neutral employment practice procedure or test that in the end causes a disparity. And when we talk about causing a disparity and what the definition of a disparity is, we're generally speaking talking about statistics, running statistical analyses to show that, hey, hold on a second, of those people who took the written test, there's a dramatically different passing rate between men and women or whites and minorities. That's what's typically required to carry the initial first burden. So when we're talking about disparate impact, we're talking about things like your basic qualifications. Lifting requirements are renowned for having adverse impact, and also sometimes being arbitrarily established. If you see, for example, if any of your organizations or clients have lifting requirements for more physically demanding jobs, and you see those lifting requirements falling on round numbers like 50 pounds, 75 pounds, that is low-hanging fruit, because what that means to the enforcement agency is it's probably arbitrarily set. There's ways to establish job-related lifting requirements that, generally speaking, don't end up falling on nice round numbers like that, or other basic qualifications. Any number of things that might have adverse impact are under the scrutiny of the OFCCP and certainly the EEOC. Tests. A lot of organizations will use standardized tests because they think it will provide them with a certain amount of insulation against litigation, which is true if those tests are developed properly and if they are used properly. But also they can be used against you because you amass a number of people going through and taking these tests. If the test itself has adverse impact, it needs to be, quote-unquote, job-related for the position in question and consistent with business necessity. So the EEOC is looking into pre-employment examinations, written tests, work sample tests, physical ability tests, interviews. A lot of folks say, interviews can evade the scrutiny of these agencies. That's not true. Any component in your selection process whereby people move on in the process or people get kicked out of the process because they didn't pass, for example, is subject to review. And interviews certainly can do that. Background checks, Marilee's going to talk a lot more about those as well today because they can result in adverse impact or disparate impact.